Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Set 10 has just been released and I have 5 of the top comps to go through to help you climb ranked in the new season. So let's get into it. Starting off with my favourite comp so far in the set, and although this isn't the strongest, it is a reliable top 4 comp that is stable at all stages in the game. You'll typically go for this composition if you get a Nami or Taric headliner in the first few rounds, as well as picking up any AP items such as rods or tears. Positioning is key to this comp, as not only do you want all of the units to benefit from the disco ball bonuses, but you want to surround your TF with hyper pop units as they give additional attack speed to their closest units. The headliner you want to go for in this comp is of course TF. It doesn't matter if he gives you the +1 to disco or dazzler, as they both work very well, but if you see a blitz headliner with +1 to disco first, you should pick that up instead. If there's one piece of advice I could give you going into this set, is not to be greedy with selecting your headliner. A 2-star blitz with a +1 to disco is not something to pass up on just for the additional chance of seeing a TF. The augments you want to be looking out for are any of the premium combat augments that provide sustain, such as healing orbs, or the AP related augments such as Magic Wand and Unleashed Arcana. Outside of those, the only other augment you want to look out for is the tier 2 disco augment that gives additional range and reduced pulse time on the disco balls. For itemization on TF, you want to make sure you have at least one mana generation item, ideally Spear of Shojin, but if you get given a lot of tears then blue buff is perfectly fine. The other 2 items are flexible. I've suggested JG and Giant Slayer as it allows you to use any additional AD items you might get, but others you could use are Guinzoo's, Archangels, or even Deathcap. For the early game, as I mentioned earlier, you ideally want to find a disco headline and pair it with matching traits such as Guardian, Dazzler or Bruiser, but you can also use the Spellweaver start and transition later on. Level to 4 at 2-1 and look to use Nami or Annie as your item holder for TF, and any tank items put on your non-disco tank until you find Blitz. Going into the mid game, as this is a comp that uses a 4-cost carry and tank, you want to use a standard leveling strategy and hit level 6 at 3-2, 7 at 3-5 and 8 around 4-5. By level 7 you should have 3 Spellweavers as your main damage source, and pair that with either Guardians, Sentinels or Bruisers for your front line like you can see here. Once you hit level 8 you want to sell your current headliner and roll down for any TF headliner or disco blitz. Stay at level 8 until you have both 2-star blitz and TF, at which point you can then try to go to level 9 to either put in Bard for 4 Dazzler if you get a disco headliner, or go Illaoi for Bruiser if you get Dazzler TF headliner. The comp you can pivot to if needed is KDA Spellweavers, as it already shares a few of the units you should have anyway, and the items for TF fit well for Ahri. On your roll down at level 8, pick up any KDA items you see, and if you find an Ahri headliner in your shop, you can make an easy switch to this comp.
You want style? You found her.
Before we get into this next comp, if you do find these guides helpful, I'd really appreciate you liking and subscribing, as it really helps support the channel. I'm always looking to improve these guides, so if there's anything you'd like to see added, then let me know in the comments. Okay, so this next comp is a dual 3-cost carry comp that looks to 3-star both Samira and Urgot. This has felt very strong when I played it, but it did seem quite popular, and you'll struggle to 3-star your carries if you contested, so make sure to scout the lobby before committing to this. For your headliner, you really want Country as the +1 trait, so you don't have to run Katarina, but the actual unit doesn't matter too much. In most cases this will be Samira or Urgot. As this is a reroll comp, any augments that help with that, such as army building, trade sector or prismatic ticket, are a solid pickup. Freezer Crowd also gives great value in this comp, as you run 5 different 3 costs. For itemization you should focus on Samira, but if you find yourself picking up more Urgots and think you'll 3-star him much earlier than Samira, then you can look at prioritizing his itemization, but remember that Last Whisper is a must for the armor shred. The other main unit you want to itemize is your tank, which in this case is Thresh, and again I've suggested the 3 premium tank items, but just build what you can. In the early game the only country unit at 1 cost is Tahm Kench, so you'll struggle to hit country at 2-1, but if you get lucky with the loot orbs and hit another country unit, you should breeze through the early game. The other opener I've suggested is Heartsteel, as this will allow you to get some extra econ to hit level 7 quicker, and it has good item holders in Aphelios for Samira's items. In the mid game you want to activate 5 country as soon as possible, and if you don't have Samira or Urgot as a headliner by the time you hit level 7, you should sell your headliner and do a slight roll down to get one of them. From there you're really just looking to slow roll for 3-star Samira and Urgot before going to level 8. The late game for this comp is really leveling to 8 once you've hit everything else, and slotting in one of the frontline 5 costs like Alawi or Yorick. This isn't really a composition that needs to reach high levels to get top 4 finishes, and the success really sits upon you 3-starring your 3 cost units. The pivot option for this comp is to go level 8 instead of slow rolling at 7, and dropping down to 3 country to put in the stronger executioners such as Karthus and Akali. You want to do this if you're being contested and need to wait until the other person dies before looking to 3-star your Samira and Urgot.
A clever fox is never caught.
This comp uses perfect synergies across the board and lets you get a free item on your headliner Ahri by having 3 superfans active. The downside to this is that it means the comp is less flexible when it comes to pivoting. The key unit is of course Ahri, but what makes this comp so strong is the fact that it activates so many great traits. As this is a full AP composition, you don't really want to be going for this if you get lots of AD items at the start of the game. For the augments, you want any AP related augments such as Jeweled Lotus, Magic Wand or Unleashed Arcana. I'll always suggest Healing Orbs as a tier 1 option as it's just a great combat augment, but it's especially strong in this comp as Ahri has high single target damage, which means you'll be killing individual units much quicker than other compositions do. For the itemization, you only really want 2 items on Ahri as she'll get a death cap for free from the Superfan trait. Make sure she has at least 1 mana generation item and any other damage items such as JG or Giant Slayer. Your other main itemization should be tank items on Neeko, and then look at prioritizing a magic shred item such as Static Shiv. For the early game, there are lots of great options as KDA has 2 1-cost units, and there are lots of other units which complement that, like Crowd Diver, Superfan and Sentinel. Whichever opener you get, make sure you have good item holders for Ahri. Evelynn and Annie are both great options for this. Going into the mid game, you want to activate either 5 KDA or 5 Spellweaver, depending on the kind of opener you had. As this is a 4-cost headliner, you don't really want to be rolling before level 8, so make sure you pick up any Spellweavers or KDA units as you're leveling. Depending on whether you get the KDA or Spellweaver Ahri headliner, you'll need to put in an additional Spellweaver or KDA unit to activate the other trait. Once you get to level 8, you want to sell your headliner and roll down for Ahri. As this is a single 4-cost carry composition, this is quite risky if there are other players contesting you. To combat this, you can look to pick up any additional Spellweavers, as well as Zac on your roll down, just in case you need to pivot. Lulu is a great option as a headliner Spellweaver carry if you can 3-star her, and should be much easier to hit than Ahri.
Rules are made to be broken. Like buildings.
This is a 1-cost reroll which was designed especially for that purpose. Punk gives you bonuses for refreshing your shop, as well as making your first shop each round cost 1 gold instead of 2. You want to look at going for this when you get a Punk opener with either Vi and Jinx, and you've scouted the lobby to make sure no one else is contesting you. Your main goal is to 3-star Jinx over everything else, but you should be 3-starring the majority of your board as 90% of it is 1 and 2 costs. For augments, you want anything that can help you refresh your shop more, whether that be reroll augments like Trade Sector and Frequent Flyer, or gold augments like Infernal Contract. Outside of those, you really want sustain related augments to help with your lack of frontline, so Healing Orbs or Cybernetic Leech would be great options. Itemization, you want to prioritize Last Whisper and Grinsus on Jinx, then the third item can be any other strong AD item like Deathblade or Infinity Edge. Your tank in this comp is Pantheon. Considering he's a 2-cost, he's actually quite strong once you have a few items on him, and he should be enough to give you rapid fire backline enough time to kill the enemy board. In the early game, you want to find and activate Punk as soon as possible to get the reduced cost on the shop, and to get your Punk bonus going. This isn't a composition you can look to play in the mid game, as it relies on getting the shop refreshes early on to stack the bonus. As it's a 1-cost reroll, you don't want to level up early, and instead stay low level to Econ and 3-star Jinx before leveling up to 6. In the mid game, you should hit 3-star Jinx and leveling up to 6 to slow roll 3-star the rest of your team. Ideally, you want to be 3-starring at least Pantheon and one other rapid fire before leveling up to 7 or 8. If you don't manage to hit all your rapid fire units when slow rolling, you can look at replacing them with a Mumu and Vex to play an Executioner Emo Guardian angle, which is also quite strong. The late game is fairly straightforward, as it's really a case of leveling up to 7 to improve your front line. Neeko is a great option, but you can also go for a Mumu if you find him instead. At that point, you can decide to either continue leveling up to 8 or rolling to finish 3-starring any units you haven't already, but the majority of the time you will finish the game at level 7. Pivoting out of this comp isn't really an option, as in order for it to work you have to commit very early on. That is why it's so important to scout the lobby at 2-1 to make sure no one else is contesting you before committing.
Love ruins all.
And finally, another one of my favourites so far in this set. It's very simple to play and has both an AD carry and AP carry, which makes it viable to play regardless of the item components you get early on. Similar to the Disco TF composition, you want to be leveling to 8 as fast as possible to get your 4-cost carries of Viego and Karthus. The headline of this comp isn't too important as long as it's pentakill, and you'll want to look to sell your current headliner at level 8, then roll down until you find a pentakill Karthus or Viego headliner. You want to be looking out for any of the strong combat augments, especially any related to sustain, as Viego is going to be jumping into the backline, making him a big target for the enemy board. Itemization is fairly simple with this comp, any AD items onto Viego, and any AP items onto Karthus. You can look at putting any tank items onto Mord or Blitz, but your main priority should be damage items on your 2 carries. In the early game you want to level 4 at 2-1 to play around pentakill with Bruisers and Edgelords. Yasuo and Riven are great item holders for Viego and should help carry you through the early rounds. For the mid game, activate 5 pentakill as soon as you can and look at slotting in Set for Bruiser and Mosher traits. You can also ditch the Edgelords for a Heartsteel to get a bit of extra econ if you struggle to find any Edgelords. Late game, similar to the other 4-cost carry comps, you should be hitting level 8 around stage 4-5. From there you want to sell your current headliner and roll down for Viego or Karthus. As I mentioned before, you don't need to greed for the perfect headliner. Pentakill Karthus will work just as well as Viego and it's not worth the risk. Once you've hit both 2-star Karthus and Viego, you can look at going 9 to 2-star any of the 5 costs you've managed to pick up. The pivot comp for this is Vertical Edgelords. This is also a very strong comp and you can look to go for this if you find lots of Edgelords and no Karthus on your roll down at level 8. It should work very well if you went with a Heartsteel board in the mid game, as you will already have the Set and Yone. And that's it for this guide. I hope you found it helpful and good luck with climbing in the new set.